Committee of the whole meeting. It is great to see everyone, and we appreciate your presence. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment on behalf of the board to commend a few folks. I would like to commend our superintendent, district and school level administration, teachers, staff, and numerous members of our student body who stepped forward in a time of great need and worked tirelessly to make a difference for the families of our community. We cannot be prouder of your service and sacrifices. Your actions serve as a testimony to your great love of children and community. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It's an honor to represent such an outstanding group of individuals. Please join me in standing and giving each of those who served a great big round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Again, we just can't say thank you enough. I know that each of us were truly inspired by what we're able to witness and see on Facebook, all the wonderful things happening in our community. Our first matter of business is the approval of the consent calendar. Are there any corrections to the minutes posted for our committee of the whole session on September 17th?
Madam Chairman, I move the acceptance of the consent calendar.
Okay. We have a motion from Mr. Sailors. We have a second from Mrs. Mosley. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries. Our second matter of business is appearance of visitors. Do we have any speakers? No speakers. All right. Our third matter of business is administration, and Mr. Sailors is going to be serving as the chair of the administration section. Mr. Sailors, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Our first item of business in order is item 3.01, a report from the administration on the response to Hurricane Helene recovery. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Oh. So as most of you know, but as in summary, on Friday morning, the 27th, hurricane passed through Greenville County and had an impact on every facility that we have. We have 105 active facilities. Obviously, there was widespread flooding. Trees and power lines were down. There were damage to homes, businesses, and vehicles throughout our community. On Friday, we had 104 of the 105 active locations without power, only one having utility service. Our initial response, we assessed all the facilities and equipment for damage, including structural damage to buildings, stadiums, and other structures. We prioritized all the necessary steps to ensure safe entry to campuses, clearing sidewalks, driveways, and parking lots. Initiated any needed repairs. We monitored throughout this event cooler and freezer temperatures at all school sites and discarded food items when temperatures exceeded safe numbers. We reordered and restocked all our kitchens to serve 85,000 daily meals. District employees began this assessment and response Friday afternoon, as soon as the storm had subsided. As power is restored, we troubleshot any resulting equipment failures and malfunctions to ensure ability to maintain an appropriate learning environment. Quite often when power is restored, you'll have HVA systems go down. You'll have other damage to lighting oftentimes. So we have to go in and assess every facility once the power comes back up, bring those systems back up, and see if any repairs are needed or necessary. One of the first ones we actually had to do was an HVAC system at Hillcrest High School that was being used as a Red Cross shelter. We had to replace a motor on the HVAC system there, which was done within 1 day's time. Worked throughout the the time of the incident to ensure an adequate supply of fuel, both for our own vehicles and to work closely with the state to ensure the ability to fuel buses is maintained. At one point during this process, we only had on hand or available to us 2 days worth of fuel to operate our buses based on the average daily consumption. That's now been addressed. We have fuel sufficient to run our buses in a normal manner. We also assess the status of all our employees, their availability to report, their home power and internet status. Given the fact that we have a large number of employees, that number of responses was also very indicative to us of the impact to the community. When we got more than 9,000 employees responding, you can pretty well correlate their lack of power, their lack of internet to the community at large. All right, so during the response, we had 8 in-person meetings of district leadership occurred before the storm and after the storm. Anytime we have a predicted weather event, we bring the district's ICE team and district leadership in to look at that event as it is being forecast and what preparations that we need to make to address that event. And those are numerous, but this is a little different event. Unlike snow and ice, this is a more massive impact throughout the district. So in each one of those meetings, we received a report of conditions and impacts as follows: a power status of locations, a facilities assessment, response, and repair, transportation status including routing, driver availability, fueling capacity, a review of security issues with input from both our own security department and the Sheriff's School Enforcement and Investigation Division. ETS availability of internet, Wi-Fi access for both operational monitoring and instructional availability. As you all know, there are a large number of operational systems in this district that rely on the internet and Wi-Fi access. It's not just related to the delivery of instruction in a regular classroom on a regular day or e-learning. It is in fact how we monitor all of our HVAC systems. There are some repairs that can be done remotely through that control system. It's obviously how we run payroll. We do time and attendance accounting reporting for employee payroll. We actually monitor our abilities to provide internet and Wi-Fi access through internet and Wi-Fi access. We monitor and track work orders. In other words, our systems run on computer systems. Now, if we have to go back to paper and pencil, we do that if we have to. We also have the update of the status of our various communication systems throughout the district. In other words, we put buses back on the road. Is our radio system 100% functional, covering the entire county? The Wi-Fi inside the buses that transmits other data, is it 100% functional? The first one, the answer to that is yes, our radio system's 100% functional. The Wi-Fi may or may not be 100% functional as we return tomorrow. That's not a life safety issue though. It's a more matter of convenience and efficiency. Fans gave an update regarding supply chain to resupply kitchens, availability of personnel, and service status of equipment. You can imagine the amount of food that we have to keep on hand to serve 85,000 meals a day, and if we had to zero out that inventory, we ordinarily receive shipments of food twice a week, Wednesday and Friday. These are the same contractors that supply all the other large institutional food providers as well as most restaurants. So they have a schedule. They were able to do some off-schedule deliveries. We're good to go with food on hand now to resume tomorrow. We also assess the instructional impact and the development of needed academic adjustments to account for missed days of school. The athletic and extracurricular impact and scheduling to regain missed contests and events. We also communicated to the South Carolina High School League in writing, asking them to address an extension of the fall sports season. They're in region play. They're about to approach the playoffs in some sports and earning the right to go to the playoffs in others, though not as clearly important to our students and our athletic programs, but not more important than getting students back in school and regaining our academic footing. Drafting communications to employees and the community to clearly convey the reasoning for decisions and the planned path forward. We have done 6 district-wide updates to parents, employees, community, and media from the 25th through the 7th. So beginning in the afternoon of the 27th, personnel assessed every facility and vehicle for damage. They worked through the weekend and throughout week 1 to clear driveways, sidewalks, and other areas and repair any damage to buildings, athletic, playground facilities. Still doing some cleanup on areas around campus, and we will be for several weeks. One of the things you have to look at that people don't always think about, we mentioned athletics earlier. We put crowds in stadiums. We had our engineers and facilities construction go around and check the seating. Every stadium we have to ensure there was no structural damage. You imagine the force of the winds that we had in a hurricane that can easily twist or contort stadium seating. All those have been inspected and cleared. Now we've moved in the process of clearing trees, bushes, and debris from other areas of each school's campus. Serving as a community resource, we operated a Red Cross shelter site at Hillcrest High School. We had, at the height of the utility response, 14 different locations used as staging areas for utility companies. We are currently down to 5 locations being utilized for utility companies, Woodmont High, Woodmont Middle, Sioux Cleveland, Waddell Road facility, and what's the 5th one, Philip? Welcome. Academics, we called an e-learning day in preparation for the 27th. At that point, not having any idea of what the impact and strength of the storm would be, there were a number of forecast tracks, a number of impacts projected, but that was ultimately not possible because of the tremendous loss of power and internet. We've had no in-person school or e-learning from the 30th through the 8th, because given the level of internet outage and power outage, that was not practical. Surveys of staff members found many could not exit their properties or neighborhoods. Some were out of town due to damage, outages, family health reasons. Some had vehicles totaled and or homes seriously damaged or destroyed. Many of our employees travel across the county or from other counties, some even from Western North Carolina to their work locations. On Friday, October the 4th, 145 teams, 2-person teams of Greenville County Schools personnel drove every road to assess accessibility for buses and or cars, not just bus routes and what would be primary routes to school. You have at your place a map that's rolled up. If you unroll that map, what you will see are a series of red dots. Each one of those dots is one of 78,000 students. You have at your place a map of the district, a grid map. The first one from Friday, October the 4th, has 145 grids on it, 2 miles by 2 miles, most of them. It's a heat map. Dark red has the most issues, light red the second most, the goldish color, the next most issues, and yellow, the next most issues. The reason for doing this, unlike a traditional winter storm, ice storm or a snowstorm, when we put out 50 members of the ICE team, we physically check every school location in the district and the primary routes to those schools. And based on the years of experience of the people doing that, they know where to go, where low-lying areas, where shaded areas, where are problem areas. Given the widespread nature of this storm, that was insufficient for us to accurately assess the impact to the entire district. So beginning Friday morning around 8, so we made sure we're not out there before daylight, those 145 teams spread throughout the county. And it took, some of them were back in within 2.5 hours. Some of them took 6 hours to assess their areas. But by the end of the day, we had every problem area. The problem areas were photographed and detailed in writing, so there was a description. Information upon those teams' return was entered into a database by other personnel, all of us working out of MT Anderson. There's no power in this building, and that's a little more central to the county than the operations center at Space Drive. So over 300 employees drove 9,000 miles of roads. Now our buses run 38,000 miles a day. That's a morning route and an afternoon route. And in the morning, there are 2 tiers, elementary, secondary. In the afternoon, there are 2 tiers, elementary and secondary. But that's 9,000 unique road miles, where we identified and cataloged 1,549 problem areas. Here's just some examples. You can see trees across the road. You can see in one case a power pole, line, and transformer in the road. You see that power pole leaning in many cases, and I think you can make out the detail, it's actually being held up by the power line. If you look at the next photograph, though one's overlaid on the other, I think you can still see in the distance. Neither of those signals are working. That's a huge issue. And I think anybody that's driven in the last week would agree that's a huge issue, because it would appear there are some number of people who do not know what to do when you approach an intersection and the light's out. Or their default was speed up and go through it, which obviously extremely dangerous. You can see a washed out road there. I don't think there's a picture in here of it, but there was one road where there's a sinkhole went all the way over to the center line of the road. You see trees down in the road there. So among the things that we looked for would be debris piles an issue. Now, obviously, you got to clean up property, and the debris has to go in the street so it can be picked up. But in some cases, a car could navigate between debris piles, but not a bus. So as we were out looking at those grids, and I took one of the grids, and one of the assistant principals from Blue Ridge High rode with me. He wrote all the observations down while I drove. You look for the debris pile. Can you navigate through that? You also have to think about when you run buses, the first ones report to the bus center and leave there at 5:30 in the morning. So they're traversing roads in the dark. It's a little easier to navigate it when you can see everything clearly, but obviously that's an issue as well. So as we look at assessing the impact, we were looking for those kinds of things. All right, here's one of the spreadsheets. Now, this will show, this is a screenshot capturing power outages. So you'll see has power, ETS network, generator running. So that was captured early in the process. Those were constantly updated throughout each day. That's for power, internet, and is the generator up and running? All our buildings have generators on them, which is the first way you check to see if you got power to the building. If you drive up that building, you roll the window down, you hear the generator running, you know there's no power in that building. Sometimes that generator will not kick in the way it's supposed to. Then we have to send maintenance out to get the generator back online. All right, so Monday, we repeated that process. But Monday, we only went back to the 1,574 identified trouble spots. Didn't necessarily check every area, but generally rode through the areas and went to every one of those spots. Again, updating that information, entering it into the database. So as of yesterday, we were down to about 1,000. Our bus supervisors started Friday afternoon, based on the initial reports, beginning to reroute. As you might imagine, with 1,500 areas they had to avoid, that's an extremely time-consuming and tedious, detailed task. Even though they have routing software, somebody has to put that information in and do the route around. So they worked on that through yesterday. During the day yesterday, the routing software went down. Took about 2.5 hours to get it back up. So there's the heat map. You have a copy of that at your place for yesterday's assessment, where we're down to 1,074, which is a 31% reduction. Now, this morning, as we're sitting here, since we're in daylight hours, our bus drivers are running those rerouted routes. They have the advantage of daylight, so they can see all the conditions before they approach them in the dark. If there's been something that has changed, they can note that. One of the things that we noted on Monday is there were a few additional areas. People clear things out, they pick up debris, then more clearing out occurs in a debris pile previously cleared may reappear. So this gives them the opportunity to run their revised routes with the advantage of daylight. As of today, all locations have power and internet except one school. We have a service line from power line going into Greenville Middle. One leg of that is bad. We had an issue with it pre the storm. They believed it to be repaired. Either that repair didn't hold or the storm impacted in some way. We anticipate that service being replaced by the end of the day today. All locations are accessible. We have one school with a driveway blocked by a down utility line, and we're working on that right now to try to get that removed. Fans, our cafeterias lost all perishable products in the outage. Our kitchens are now restocked and ready to serve students Wednesday. And we're on a delivery schedule to ensure that we're back on a regular schedule of resupply. All right, so there's an update to has power, ETS network generator running. All right, we talked about assessing facilities. It's hard to see this from a distance, but every location in the district is listed on here by area. And you will see on there leaks, building damage, trees, safe access to school, outside damage. And there are notes written under every one based on the initial assessment of each one of those 106 locations. We then prioritize what needs to be done first there. First, meaning what do we need to do to ensure it is safe for faculty and student to return to the building. So this is maintained real time, starting on day one when the first assessment's done, going throughout the event until we have fully recovered, and then we'll maintain those records. So transportation, current status, we've modified over 300 bus routes. Drivers are running those routes today, as I mentioned, in daylight to be aware of obstacles and identify any additional issues. Temporary bus stop locations and times are being communicated to families today. Activities and athletics. We have had limited and voluntary practices today. Only athletics. The reason being, those athletes have not conditioned in about 11 days. If they're going to return to competition later this week, they need to come back in and begin that conditioning. Other activities we will resume when we return to regular schedule on Wednesday. And right now, we have no intention of allowing things to go on past 6 p.m., at least not the initial days, so not today, tomorrow, or perhaps Thursday. Then we'll reconsider that leading into the weekend. We always have the option of playing ball games or contests on Saturday during the day. Our concern is people traveling at night when the visibility of these debris piles is not as clear. But we'll make that call later in the week. We have no field trips through the rest of this week. One, we need to be focused on return to instruction, and two, we got enough routing buses and dealing with buses for regular transportation and the during the day transportation that occurs throughout the district. Academics, end of the first quarter was October 11. We're extending that to the 21st to add 5 days of instruction. 5 days of instruction and the opportunity to gain more grades upon which a student's grade will be based for the quarter. So there are 2 reasons there. No change to the end of quarter 2 or first semester. We don't want to do that because that could end up moving our exams to after Christmas. And quite technically, it doesn't matter how many days you have in one quarter versus another. That's not as important as aligning them to get more assessments in before we deliver a first quarter grade and to keep our exams on this side of Christmas break. Lesson plans, our teachers will have opportunity to rework those today during the day. So many of them are still without internet or without power at home. So what they had planned to do the Friday we got out now may not be what they're going to do. They also have to assess if perhaps their lesson involved using some technology in their classroom. We know we have internet and Wi-Fi to the building. They are the only ones can determine if they have a problem in their room. We don't have the people to go around and check every technology asset in every room. So that will take place. All right, so talked about we assessed our employees. So whether they were available to report, whether they had power at home, they had internet at home. That's a sample of the spreadsheet where we gathered that information. It's been revised multiple times through yesterday. And if they were not available to report, the instruction to their supervisor was to follow up and see what was the impediment to their being able to report. Had they suffered some loss of their vehicle or their home, or had they, in some cases, people chose to leave to go somewhere where they had power, water, where they did not have damage. So our employees, all employees able to work either in person or from home continue to do so during the closure, with many putting in extra hours. There are a number of tasks that our employees perform they can do and perform remotely. We also had people obviously throughout facilities, security, transportation, fans, ETS, district leadership, divisions, departments throughout the district working on site. All employees are receiving their regular pay on the normal schedule, except for after-school programs, which those are standalone programs operated by the schools. The district does not support those financially. Salaried exempt employees are not eligible for overtime pay. Many of them work considerable overtime, but that's part of their job responsibility and their salary. Hourly non-exempt employees are paid for every hour worked. Our hourly employees can make up any missed time by attending additional training, performing extra duties, drawing down comp time, personal days, vacation leave, or any combination of the above. So we are ensuring that all of our employees receive their pay, but in return, they are working those hours required, because as you might imagine, we've got a whole lot of hourly employees that are out there working every day, hundreds of them. So to maintain an equitable status for all of our employees, we treat it this way by paying them and working with them to make up any time that they may have missed, so they don't have to be docked any pay. Be glad to take any questions that anyone might have regarding that report or our status or our motion forward.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. Nancy, where are we at on time?
15 minutes.
I have a question.
Just a second. We have 15 remaining or 15?
15 per question.
How much on the clock? So, okay, thank you. Ann, let me get, Ann, I've got a couple of people in the room. Let me get to them and I'll come to you second.
No, I'm Linda.
Okay, Linda, hang on a second. Ms. Mosley, you had a question?
Thank you so much, Mr. Sailors. Yes, I have a question. So, Dr. Royster, obviously the lost academic time is of concern for many in my area, particularly high school parents, because we have high schoolers, unlike elementary and middle, are on block schedule. So missing 7 or 8 days, however many it's been, is really almost missing double what they've been. We obviously have EOCs that are state test at the end of this semester. I believe they take those before
Yes.
Christmas. And we already have talked about, I think even as recent as our last meeting, about it's already difficult for our teachers to teach the content under normal circumstances that the state requires. We don't always know what content's going to be on these tests, and then now we've lost 8 days of content. So how does all that reconcile when it comes to the lost time? The teachers are obviously not superhuman. I mean, they are, but they technically aren't. So
Well, in one,
what do we do?
to that point, one of the things you'll find is they will individually immediately begin to figure out how they can focus more on, because obviously the EOC is not the only thing they're teaching in those
Right.
classes.
Right.
They will pare down the other to focus more on the EOC. I would assume, and I'll let Mr. McCoy speak more in detail about that, we have done reviews prior to EOC for several years now, so there's an opportunity to ramp that up. One of the things that we know is kind of like some other issues related to education. If you have makeup days, particularly if they are a large number, they are generally very poorly attended. They do not meet the design or the purpose of actually getting back the work that you missed. So the better strategies are to pare down the things outside of those most directly related to the power standards. Try to capture as much time within class devoted to that. Add some times for students to come in to get extra help believe they need it themselves or their parents do. So, Mr. McCoy, would you speak more to the details of that? And I think at this point, because those are the standardized tests applicable at high school level, the strategy for middle and elementary obviously can be a little different because there's not the compression of time. They have till the end of the year.
Yeah, so the one of the things we do at a district level, as you all know, we have curriculum maps and pacing guides for every content area, every grade level, for anything that has a standard at the State Department. So one of the things our team did last week and over the weekend is readjust those pacing guides. There are days built into the pacing guides each quarter that are column flex days that gives the teacher time to, if there was a fire drill or if they needed time to go back and the kids didn't get the lesson, to repeat the lesson the next day or readjust it. So, first thing they can do is remove those days from that pacing guide if need be. And then we've also looked at certain units. As Dr. Royster mentioned, this year we really spent a lot of time on power standards, really focusing on what standards actually are heavily tested on the state test. And so looking at which units we could eliminate between now and Christmas that would have been more of those supporting standards, but not necessarily the power standards that the kids have to have in order to be successful on that test.
Okay, so in addition to those questions that you just, thank you so much for that explanation. I'm glad to hear that we have a plan. Lots of questions about forgiveness of days. How do we handle, I mean, obviously this is an unusual event, so how do we handle that? Because a lot of folks want to know, are we making them up? Are we going to be granted some kind of waiver at the state level? How do we handle that?
It would be our intent to seek a waiver for those days because of the broad, deep, and significant impact of this. I can recall, I've done this a long time, I can recall only 2 other similar events in my 40-plus years that resulted in this number of loss of days. One was there was a huge snowstorm in the 80s, 15 inches of snow. This was sometime in the 80s, like late 80s. Shut down the whole upstate of South Carolina for about 2 weeks. Hugo was the other one, and it shut down areas of the coast for more than a month. I was living and working in Rock Hill at that time. It was still a hurricane, much like this Helene came through Greenville. Hugo was still a hurricane when it passed through Rock Hill. Some of the systems there school systems were impacted for 2 full weeks. This one is similar to those 2. Those are the ones that stand out in my mind, and in each case, the majority, if not all those days, were forgiven. Because at some point, one, it's counterproductive. People say, well, you can have school on Saturday. Well, then students don't attend. You can add time to the school day. Well, one, our school day is already above the minimum by, I believe, Jeff, 30 minutes greater than the state minimum. So we technically already go to school longer than the state requirement each day. When you have graduations set, you've got a bookend at the end of your schedule. So counterproductive, you're not going to get much out of it. It's logistically extremely difficult. So our intent would be to seek legislative forgiveness. There's a statute that covers missing of school related to weather or other events, but it was designed for regular missed days, for lack of a better description. Over about a 10-year period in Greenville County, we miss about 3.5 days a year for weather related. Well, we had the ability to e-learn now. Obviously couldn't use that during this. We've had some built-in makeup days in years past, but the level and depth of this event, we believe it best to seek forgiveness for those days, and we would certainly recommend that to the board.
Okay, so just for the record, folks that are concerned about, our calendar will stay the same. We're not going to go to school, for example, next Monday, which is scheduled to be a student holiday. Graduation dates are going to stay the same, because I've had all of these questions, folks concerned about their travel plans that they've made around the school calendar, et cetera. So I just want to make sure.
At this point, we have no intent of altering the school calendar. Now, if for some reason we could not get that legislative forgiveness, then we'd have to look at what would our alternative be. But I certainly believe, particularly our delegation would be very receptive to that. Many of them having not only seen firsthand the impact of this, but having it impact them as well.
Okay. And so my last question, I've actually asked this to Nancy, but I would like to ask it publicly. How do we assess the number of students that are displaced? Like, how are we tackling, we already serve students that are homeless.
Yes.
My concern is we now have possibly more students that at the very least may be displaced because a tree fell on their house, or where they were staying is no longer, inhabitable. So how are we as a district supporting those families? Do we wait for them to come to us and ask for assistance, or do we proactively provide resource information for them?
We've not yet communicated this out to our principals. They're back in the building for the first time today with,
Right.
with their faculty. But our intent would be, if not on day one, within the first 3 days, if you have students that do not return, to us proactively reach out to those students to see. But to your point, we already have a system in place, just not accustomed to having this many. About a little over 2% of our students are considered homeless by the definition of homeless. So we have a system of supports in place for them. We actually, if they're displaced and they want to remain in the school they're in, we provide transportation for that purpose, or we'll facilitate them going to another school if that's more convenient. So we have strategies and supports in place. It's just unusual to have possibly this large a number because we really don't know yet.
Right.
Now, we have been the recipient in years past of people leaving other states because of hurricanes and being housed here temporarily. Hurricane Katrina, we had several hundred students, some of whom were housed at Bon Secours or the convention center. It's been a few years ago, that impacted coming in to us for schools. So this is similar but a little bit different because these are our own students possibly displaced, some of whom may leave the district to go temporarily. Maybe somebody that has power or a home somewhere else in the state or in the region. I know there are efforts, community-wide efforts, that we have been a part of working with the various community nonprofits for feeding families and students, but also to provide basic needs if they don't have those. So we'll also, through those connections, try to assess what's the impact to our families. So particularly, I don't think she's in yours one, but Ann Lee Buck in Whitney's office has been in communication every day, multiple times, with nonprofits in our community that serve various family needs.
Okay, that's really great to hear. Thank you so much, Whitney. Well, that's all my questions, but I want to say already, or echo what Dr. Stiles said at the very beginning. Thank you so much to everyone who's been part of this massive effort to figure out how to get everyone back into school safely. I'm pretty impressed with the thoroughness that has been exhibited. So thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Levinus Wells, I believe you have something.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Royster, thank you so much. I would like to thank you for the detailed briefing, but most of all, thank you for making sure that our bus drivers are driving their routes today, to know their routes, to assure their safety, as well as our students in tomorrow morning. Because Botany Woods, the routes change very often, getting in and out, so I can only imagine other areas. And I appreciate you touching base on what those that are on, they're not full salary, but they're part-time, etc. There were concerns about that, and I had numerous aides, teacher aides, that were trying to figure out how they would make up their hours, how their pay would be docked, you know, various things like that. They were a little stressed out about it, and so just wanted to address that, and you did address that. So I thank you. You pretty much covered many of my questions, and I'm very appreciative once again of your detailed briefing and the reaction and proactiveness of the district. Thank you, and thank you, Chairman Sailors. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We have, time is almost run out, so without objection, we'll extend for 15 minutes. Mrs. Middleton?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Royster, and everyone that was involved in this work. It's a lot. I did get one question from a parent involving AP testing. They were worried about the tests for the AP and would the kids be prepared for those? And I guess you tried to answer that a little bit, but you're talking about the standardized end-of-year test, but these parents, or this parent was talking about the AP test specifically.
Yeah, just remember as a reminder on AP testing, those happen in the spring.
Okay.
So any kids that would have finished an AP class in the fall, they have many times multiple opportunities in the spring to review that content, that course material prior to that test in the spring.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the the teachers, of course, on those courses would be sensitive to that. One thing I thought about, and tell me if this is already being done, is at the beginning of the year, do teachers give their students maybe a couple of books that they can read perhaps for extra credit in each of their classes, and then they could get these from the library or purchase them or whatever that would be related to the topic? And in that way, when they have this whole week off, and believe me, the kids are bored. They are just doing social media. They are really looking for something to do. And if they had something, I know they can't have assignments because there's no e-learning, but if we had something that could give them, say, I don't know, extra credit or something like that, like if they were to finish a book and write a little book report on it, like you would do in the summer maybe, is that something that could be considered?
I do think teachers are creative in how they, grade and how they look at that. Many of our teachers, practice-wise, they end up looking at dropping the lowest grade for students each quarter, each semester, those types of things as well. Kids do have, if they have access to the internet, of course, this is unprecedented, but they do have access to our full library, from a digital standpoint, as it goes. But I don't know that teachers widespread would necessarily assign that, but I think they do get creative in how kids can get additional show mastery, shall we say. And I think that's probably what's most important. We try to emphasize it's not so much about the grade as much as it is about the mastery of standards. So certainly there's be some skills that would be in classes that would fit with a book report, but then there'd be others that those really skills wouldn't fit towards necessarily the standards being taught in that class. But we've asked our teachers to give grace, and we've asked our teachers to, really look at, alternate ways that we can assess, knowing that we missed, 5 days or 7 days, whatever it was, 7 days of school. And that's one of the reasons we extended that first quarter by a week, is so the teachers had some time, another, 5 days or so to get some grades in to help assess the mastery towards those standards.
Okay. Because I think at least the parents would be appreciative if their kids actually had something they could go to and say, well, why don't you read that book? Give you a little, an actual real book. I know it's hard,
Oh, yeah.
but read a real book and maybe write a little summary of that, and so maybe they wouldn't lose so much of their academic vigor when they come back, especially if it's a long time. The other question I have is, when we submit a waiver to the state, a hopeful waiver to have these days excused, that will not prevent us from, submitting another waiver, Dr. Royster say, with, there still could be snowstorms. I'm from the Northeast, we have snow days, but there could be snowstorms, there could be anything else that could happen, and we could be down again.
Well, at this point, what we would seek, and this requires legislative forgiveness, not State Department, they're following the law as currently written, would be any days missed beginning with day one of the hurricane through through today. Our intent would be to operate under our normal procedures if we have other days lost, which is the first three would be e-learning, which generally we can do in a snow or ice storm, because you also have the provision, if you lose power at your individual house, we have it set up where you have so many days to get that work done afterwards. The next three can be waived by this body. So that gives us 6 days total. Again, over a 10-year period, our average that we miss is about 3.5 days. So we should be fine with that, kind of with a reset. We do not intend to claim Friday as an e-learning day. No e-learning took place. The loss of power was too immediate and too widespread for us to even conduct e-learning on Friday. So it'd be our intent to seek forgiveness of that, which would restart the clock at 0 for e-learning days.
Okay, so e-learning day counts as a regular school day?
Yes, it counts
Okay.
as a day of attendance.
Teacher work days, will the teachers still have their teacher work days? Is
We've
that
not
the
changed
same?
anything else in the calendar.
Perfect, okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a few really quick questions. You can also get a credit for the internet, the prices. Have they looked at that? But, I mean,
Well,
when the
that-
internet is down, you can get a credit.
Actually, or if you're talking about individuals, our internet is provided through the state. I don't think Bill's in here this morning. As you obviously have noticed, we only have a small group of people in here today directly related to the Reedy Laurel attendance line. But our internet into the district is provided by the state.
Okay, I
So
didn't know if it was
any
provided by a
credit
cable
that
company or
might be
something.
due would be, I would imagine, due to the state.
Okay,
Now, we may have some internal backup lines that we can seek that for, but in general, our access to the web comes through the state and it runs through MT Anderson, then distributed out through our own system to our buildings. And there are backup lines in here as well to serve as a secondary data site.
okay, thank you very much. Have we submitted any kind of FEMA applications for help with any cleanup or?
We begin day one tracking everything we do. We've had experience with this in the past. When the federal disaster area is declared, you become eligible for FEMA reimbursement. That's the way it works for us. We actually, Jeff Knotts, who many of you will recall was the longtime director of finance, retired and came back and did procurement for us. The last time we had a major FEMA claim, Jeff was the person responsible for handling that. He's agreed to come back and do all the gathering of data that we've already accumulated and completing all the forms that are required, because he has experience with doing that. And that will relieve our finance people from part of that work. So that's already underway. We've already gathered. If we, for example, I believe we drove collectively about 9,000 miles on Friday and about 9,000 miles Monday. Just the people assessing. All right, that's eligible for reimbursement.
Nice.
If you go out and put, if we took a front end loader to a school and 2 men worked for 4 hours, we have to log that 2 men took that front end loader and worked for 4 hours, and let's say they used a dump truck. There's a FEMA chart. You used a dump truck, 2 men, and a front end loader. You get X dollars. Doesn't matter what it costs you. Here's the FEMA reimbursement. Now, generally speaking, our experience in the past is that is more than sufficient to reimburse us. Now, the last large claim that we had, it was probably about 18 months after the storm before we got the final compensation from FEMA.
Thank you, that's terrific. I'm glad to hear that. One last question, I promise. How is everything communicated to the parents, say as alternate bus routes and this type of thing, like, because it could be very specific to certain situations? Is this like a blast email or something, or what?
Alternate bus routes by phone, individually by phone. So today, with the drivers helping with that, so we've got like 15 transportation supervisors, the center managers, some safety training officers. All of them will be making phone calls because it's individual. You have to tell a person. Now, if we had broad-based changes and we already had them loaded in, for example, in bad weather, it's fairly often we can't go up the top of Paris Mountain. They know. So they can get that group can get a group message and they'll know to be at the base of Paris Mountain. We have that in a few other areas of the county, but we don't have this preset. There's no way to preset all this. So they'll have to make actual phone calls. And one of the reminders that we sent out in the communication yesterday was to ask our families to make sure that It might not be.
You're probably gonna go spam.
Well, it may be an unknown number, but we need for you to try to answer it and tolerate the spam for today to make sure you get the information about your bus stop.
That is, thank you again for all the work you did. It's amazing. I'm very impressed. That's it for me.
Dr. Presley, I believe you have a question. Ann? We'll come back. Ms. Doolin, then Dr. Stiles.
Thank you. I'd also like to commend the district on this robust response. I don't think anyone is going to criticize how much work has been done. And I think the community really appreciates everyone's dedication, even if you had to go home to no power at your own home. It's really impressive that so many showed up. Well, can you flip back to the last slide?
This one?
Yeah, that one. For hourly employees that have to make up missed time, is it going to roughly be 50 or 60 hours?
Let's see,
If they're full-time?
generally speaking, though there's some employees that work less than this, that would be 7.5 hours times the 8 days that they missed. Some of those employees worked. For example, there were some clerical employees that were working Friday and Monday helping input this data. They have the opportunity to come in today to their school, so they don't have to miss today. This is the method we have used successfully now for, I guess, close to 20 years, including times when we've missed multiple days. There are plenty of extra opportunities. The other side of this is these are hourly employees. So if they work over 40, they actually earn time at 1.5 times the ordinary rate. So if you were a 37.5-hour employee and you work 4 hours, you're going to get what, 1.5 hours times 1.5 hours. Because when you go over 40, the makeup you're earning is time and a half. So for many employees, it will actually be less than 1-to-1. It just may exceed 40 hours in a week.
Okay. Well, when additional training is listed on there, is that just professional development
Yes.
training? Will the opportunity be available to do that online at home?
Some of it can be online, some of it can be in person. We leave that up to department heads and supervisors to determine what best fits the needs of the employees in their departments.
Okay. Also, so some standardized testing was scheduled for this week. Is that postponed, or can we just ask for a waiver for standardized testing?
Our benchmark testing.
Yeah, well, the benchmark testing we've extended. We are required by state to have 3 benchmarks a year. The other one that we've, PSAT, I believe, was the other one that was scheduled. That has some scholarship implications and some entrance implications into other types of courses and programs, so we really need to keep that. And then I believe it was COGAT Iowa we were looking at as well, which again, as you know, is one of our entrance requirements into gifted and talented. So anything we missed or is too close to, one of those was actually supposed to begin like today or tomorrow, coming back would not be the best time to dive right into that. So those are all being moved and rescheduled, so the kids still would have the opportunities that come with taking those tests.
Okay. So there just no standardized testing this week, just like the field trips, because we're going back to.
I don't think anything was scheduled this week. I think everything was rescheduled for later in the month of October.
Okay. And then lastly, like Ms. Middleton was saying, I wanted to say, my children did have assignments. Yesterday, I had to teach my 2nd grader how to make a map of how to get from our house to a playground. And my shout out to Malden Middle, my child did have a book assignment and had a book report that she completed yesterday. So we weren't not doing anything. We were actually getting in there with no computers, but doing some work. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dole.
Dr. Stiles.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. What I saw unfold during this hurricane was an exemplary strategic plan. It was clearly thought out. It was clearly collaborative, and a lot of people were involved. Dr. Royster, I just have to ask the question, was there some type of plan in place that we went by, or did we write this plan as we went?
It's built off of the district's kind of framework for inclement weather and emergency response, blending those two things together. But then, as you noted, building it as we went off of already existing framework, which makes it easier to do. But we didn't really have a framework in place for when everything goes down, but you can take the one you have and just expand upon it. And that was one of the important things coming out of all those meetings, including the initial ones. All right, what do we need to ramp up here? How do we need to expand here? How do we need to take this into account? Because it's nothing that hasn't happened, never at this magnitude. All the things that happened have happened before, but not where it affected 106 facilities.
Well, it was a wonderful plan, and I'm sure you built on a strong framework was the base of that. So again, I want to say thank you for that. And I felt like that it was navigated so well that it was definitely worthy of being shared and serving as a model for other districts who may be smaller, who don't have the resources. Has there been any thought about writing down the steps and actions that we've taken, providing a framework for others and sharing that at the state level?
Well, we pretty well have it outlined. We can beef that up if somebody's interested in it. Now, the other thing we do, and I didn't put it in here, throughout the process, I'm talking to other upstate superintendents. So the 7 in Spartanburg, 5 in Anderson, Oconee, Pickens, usually Lawrence as well. They were a little bit less impacted because they had fall break, Lawrence and Greenwood. So that helped them with their issues a little bit. But we talked just about daily. If I didn't talk to every one of those superintendents, I would talk to 1 or 2 in Spartanburg, 1 or 2 in Anderson, and they would share with the others what we were doing, and they would let me know what they're doing, what thoughts they might have. Cherokee County as well. So we got information from them. They got information from us, which was helpful to all of us.
Thank you. So that collaboration with other superintendents also strengthened our plan. So thank you for being so collaborative and engaging all of our people to be involved in, and again, such an excellent plan unfolding. Dr. Royster, I appreciate that so much. And again, I'm so pleased.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Are there any other questions other than Dr. Presley is in the process of sending something to me to share that she's having technical difficulties. She can hear us, but we cannot hear her. Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Andy, okay. Without objection, then we'll extend for another 5 minutes.
While we're waiting, this is just a really quick one. Starting back to school tomorrow, is everything in place security-wise? Like the Evolve systems, the doors lock automatically, there was no issues with security? Okay. Thank you.
Do this. Okay, thank you. From Dr. Presley, please extend my deepest thanks for an amazing comprehensive approach to addressing this disaster. Her questions have been answered by previous board members, and she appreciates our ability to allow her to make this comment. So, thank you, Ann. Okay, next thing, just one question for you, Dr. Royster, for myself.
Yes, sir.
So FEMA reimbursements, that also includes spoilage of foodstuffs and so forth?
It should, yes, sir.
Okay. Then without any additional questions, this concludes I'm sorry.
So if I might, just a brief word. I want to express my appreciation to the board for their support through this process, but most especially, facilities people, transportation, security, sheriff's enforcement investigation, communications, district leadership team. These folks have been phenomenal through this whole process. The observation was made earlier about, I believe Ms. Doolin made it, about many of these employees didn't have power at home, had trouble getting out of their driveway. In fact, our first response on Friday was hampered. Usually we could put about 100% of our facilities people out. We were able to put about 50% out because they literally couldn't get out of their driveway or their neighborhood, or in some cases perhaps their home. They put forth a phenomenal effort. Those 145 teams that we put on the road, one half of them were our folks that work in facilities, transportation, district leadership, the drivers. The other 145, they were volunteers from departments within the district office, some instructional individuals, individuals working in various departments, and assistant principals. Now, we intentionally did not ask principals so they could be in their buildings if they needed to be. But we had a tremendous response. We had more people volunteer to do that than we had space for them to do it. So my appreciation to all of those departments and individuals, just an outstanding response. The question that we most often got was, what can I do? How can I help? What can I do? And for that, I am most appreciative. So thank you, Mr. Sailors.
Thank you, and I think I speak for all of us that we, again, appreciate the collective efforts that were performed by our staff and supporters. That's what makes us, what gives us the ability to make it through such disasters. So that concludes item number 3.01. We'll now move to item 3.02, the proposed student assignment plan for Reedy Laurel Elementary School. There is a recommended motion from the administration for this issue. Would someone like to make it before we start the discussion?
The recommended motion to approve the student assignment plan for Reedy Laurel Elementary School and other schools as presented.
Second.
I have a motion properly made and duly seconded. Any discussion? Dr. Royster, do you have a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Before I turn it over to them, I was remiss in not specifically mentioning planning and demographics, but all those maps that you saw in front of you, including that one that plotted all 78,000 students on it, planning and demographics produced all of those, produced that heat map that reflected the results that we collected while out assessing all that damage, as well as being here with you this morning to present the attendance lines and for a brief overview of the program at Reedy Laurel. So at this time, I will turn it over to, I don't know if Dr. Ward has any opening comments, but to Dr. Ward and then to Greg Stanfield from Planning and Demographics.
Greg, it's all yours.
Good morning. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. We're happy to be here this morning. Mr. Sailors, rest of the board members, Dr. Royster. I'm going to briefly go over the board docs cover sheet that you have in your package. I'll hit some of the highlights as we've gone through this process. This process itself started on September 3rd, and it concluded with public comments on September 24th, so about a month period. And then we did some further analysis of our board, or of our boundaries. Many of you came into our offices and we discussed the boundaries with you. Some of you also attended our public meetings as well. Regarding the Reedy Laurel Elementary School, that obviously supports our long-range facility plan. It's really been in there for a while. It's going to give us enrollment relief there in the central part of our county. As you all know, we continue to experience growth in our county. and certainly this will help us to do that. It's located there, as all of you know, at 61 Isbell Lane, and it will open this upcoming August 2025. Just a general overview, approximately 900 students are totally affected in the reassignment plan. However, the great majority of them are really part of the Reedy Laurel Elementary plan, approximately 600 of them. So 300 other changes as well. Some of the boundary changes have little or no effect on student enrollment. What we looked at was the opportunity to make some adjustments and then also eliminate some islands. As you all may know, as we talked with you when you came and visited us or you came to the meetings, there's approximately 19 islands that we'll be eliminating in this proposal to you all. So that gives you a little bit of the overview of some of the things that we looked at. Regarding some of the details, there's 25 schools that are involved in the whole process, 16 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 5 high schools. Again, the great majority of that, though, however, has to do with the new creation of Reedy Laurel. We have the map and you can see it there of Reedy Laurel. Just to hit the highlight of that, in the red area is Reedy Laurel that you see up on the map right there. That's the proposal. 3 areas from Sarah Collins are included in that. Those are those gray areas that you see on the map. There's approximately 250 students involved in those areas. And the green area to the south of the boundary is Malden Elementary, about 150 students there approximately. And then the yellow area in the middle is a big island that we had from Pelham Road, about 160 students in that area. So that's the great majority of that. Some of the other islands that are located on that map are some changes that we're looking at as well. It involves a Blythe Elementary School. There's a section in the green to the left lower part of the map. We're proposing that a section of that go over to Sarah Collins, since Sarah Collins will be receiving significant relief, about 70 some odd students there. And then there's an area of 3 islands that we propose going to Blythe with that change of around the Shemwood area of about 80 some odd students in there. And some other islands up in the north or left-hand corner as well being eliminated as well. Some of those don't involve any students, some of them going to Sarah Collins, and a couple of those going to A.J. Or proposed to go to A.J. Wittenberg, and then a small island up in the top of the map that you see, arrow over to the red. That's Summit Drive, proposed to go over to East North Street. I think there were 3 students in that particular zone. And then if you look over on the top area, there's a purple area, Pelham Falls Estates area, that contacted us during this process that would like to go over to Pelham Falls. Part of the neighborhood, or Pelham Road, excuse me, part of the neighborhood already goes there. So with Pelham Road receiving significant relief, there's about 35 some odd students or approximate students in there. So that's the main area that we're redistricting. There's others in your packet as well. We won't go through every one of them, but the middle and the high schools, middle school, 4 kids, the high schools, we're looking at 44 students. And then we have an area projected to go over to Kearns as well, from Sioux Cleveland, as well as Grove Elementary, and that's about 80 some odd students. As far as the process, many of you were there at those public meetings. They had an opportunity to email us at our planning email or to write to us. Those meetings themselves, first one was held on September 16th at Malden High School. Some of you were there at that one. That included our changes at Oakview Elementary, Woodland, Malden Elementary, and Mitchell Road. We didn't have very many folks attend there. There was only about 8 folks attended. We also had administrative people as well. We didn't have any public speakers at that meeting. Had a couple of questions. They related to our choice options. On Wednesday, September 18th at 5:30, we had our largest meeting over at Roper Mountain Science Center, and that included the group with the new Reedy Laurel Elementary School, as well as those changes that you see on the map. We had 28 people there, a number of administrative people and some board members as well. We had no speakers there. We had a couple of questions related to choice as well, some related to the school. And then our last meeting was on September 19th at MT Anderson, and that had to do with Grove Elementary, Sue Cleveland, Thomas Kearns in our middle and high schools. We had 6 folks attend that, and administrative folks, and we had no public comments in that meeting as well. We also had a couple of map viewing opportunities where the public could come to our office, and those were on September 23rd, 3 to 5 p.m., and then Tuesday, September 24th at 9 to 11 a.m., and 3 to 5 p.m. So we didn't have any folks that visited us during that time frame. So that's a general overview of the reassignment plan. Some of the comments that we've heard from the public. We had about less than 30 emails as well that came into our office, many of them general questions related to general items, choice and whatnot. So with that, Dr. Royster and the board, I'll leave it up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Greg. Mrs. Goodwin Caldwell.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. I saw in here where you have a summary of the meetings, but you didn't put a summary of the meetings that you had with the board, where that we had some questions and some suggestions. Did y'all not do a summary of that meeting? Because some of the things that were discussed, I don't see them.
Sure. We can do that for you and get that to you.
Okay, I'm looking at the assignment, and you own, I know it impacts the middle and high schools. You say that you have an elimination of the islands, but you have a partial elimination of the island. That is where Shimwood is. I'm glad to see that the elementary school is going to be moving from them going all the way down to Malden Elementary, Malden, Bethel, and Greenbrier Elementary. But in the feeder patterns, I don't see where you have listed that it would change. They still would be going to Malden Middle and Malden High. Did you not look at that to see about that feeder pattern being up in the same area? Because, I mean, they've been going to Malden Middle, Malden High since the 70s. So I want to know, why is that not included in the elimination of an island? You have a partial. So why is that not included?
Well, we were looking in this, of course, this is just a proposal, and we were looking just at the elementary level. I'll leave that up to Dr. Royster, too, if you want to comment on that.
More specifically, I think the answer to that is we held a community meeting in that area. That's been a few years ago. In that community meeting, we had no request to remove middle or high school students from Malden High. At none of the meetings held regarding this attendance area, even though it was clear that it moved elementary students, we had no parent or guardian request moving middle or high school students. To the point that you made in your statement, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, they have gone there for several decades. The last time this matter came up prior to that first meeting I referenced, we did get some feedback. That's a number of years ago. People did not want to be moved. So our recommendation, absent that community showing up and saying we wish to be considered to be zoned into a different middle school and a different high school, we chose not to move them. We try not to move families that have given no indication they wish to be moved. There are others.
I understand what you're saying, Dr. Royster, and I was at that meeting because I set that meeting up. But I am in that community, and I hear it with them being right down the street from Southside, and I see when you had the MT Anderson meeting, I don't even see Southside mentioned on there.
No one, again, let me reiterate what I said. No one in that community has asked us, that has students, has asked us.
I represent that community, and I have asked.
No one, no parent, no guardian of a child zoned to the middle or high school has requested that it be changed.
But now that
if you wish to amend our recommendation, you certainly have the ability to do that.
Well, now that we are changing the elementary pattern, it seems appropriate for if we're changing to Blythe.
I think it would be very appropriate. I think it would be very appropriate if the parents had requested it. But absent a request from the parents, it's not been our philosophy to just move attendance areas. And that's, at this point, there's been no request from a parent or a guardian of a middle or a high school student.
But if we are trying to eliminate islands, and I see that we are eliminating some islands.
Yes.
Why are we?
We are trying to eliminate islands, but we're also trying not to. We're trying not to disturb people who are pleased with their school assignment. That's not our intent.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, absent that kind of input, which we're not getting, that would not cause us to make that recommendation.
We'll get the input. I wanted to ask also about the Highland Island. Is that one eliminated? Because I didn't see Sue Cleveland on here anywhere.
Which one, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell?
That's Highland Square in Belmead. They go all the way down to Sue Cleveland.
Yeah, that one's.
Is that one being eliminated?
Yes, ma'am. That one's going to Kearns.
Can you show me where? Because I didn't see it on the slide.
Hang on, a little technical difficulties.
Where you had who was impacted. I didn't see. I don't see it on there. I just wanted to make sure.
It is on there though, because it was going so far away. The map's not showing up, but.
But when you have it, the elimination of islands on here, I didn't see that named at all.
Sure.
So is that island being eliminated?
Yes, ma'am.
The kids that are going down to Sue Cleveland now or will be going to Kearns.
Yes, ma'am.
So I need to see that on here, and I don't.
You go to your next question, let them deal with the technology.
Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Hang on a second. Nancy, you got it up? Okay. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. The two yellow areas there that you see the arrows, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, those are the areas that presently go to Sue Cleveland that we have going or proposed to go to Thomas Kearns.
Okay, it's on the map, but I didn't see it in your presentation at all,
Sure.
and I needed to
Okay.
see that.
It was a different map.
I see it on the map. I don't see it in the presentation as saying that that island was being
Okay.
eliminated. Okay.
Greg, can you update the list and resend it out?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. I know Mrs. Mosley's next, but before we step forward, Matt, did you have anything you wanted to present? I was told that you wanted to talk about the school, so do we do that now or after the questions on the maps? Dr. Royster? Let's go, okay, we'll finish the questions related to the map questions, and then we'll ask the principal to make his comments. Ms. Mosley, and then Mrs. Middleton and Dr. Stiles.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. I just needed a clarification. I want to make sure I understood correctly. We were this is regarding Pelham Falls. So they currently go to Woodland, right? The students in Pelham Falls go to Woodland. Are we rezoning the whole neighborhood for Pelham Road? I'm a little unclear what you said about them wanting to go to Pelham Road.
Yeah, that group currently goes to up to Mitchell Road, and they petitioned us during this process to look at that. It's Pelham Estates off Pelham Road.
Oh, I thought you said Pelham Falls.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. That's why I was like confused about. I know what you're talking about there, because we talked about that in the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that's why I was a little bit unclear, because I heard you say Pelham Falls, and I thought we're
Sorry.
saying Pelham Falls. Okay, never mind. I'll have a question.
Okay, Ann?
Basically, mine's a follow-up there, because as usual, I'm confused here. So Pelham Estates, that subdivision was going to Woodland?
Mitchell Road.
Mitchell Road, okay. Now they're going to Oakview.
No, Pelham Road.
Pelham Road, okay. But some of Pelham Falls is going to Oakview, I understood.
Not Pelham Falls. He misspoke. He meant to say
Pelham Estates, not Pelham Falls.
But some of Pelham Estates is going to Oakview.
No,
None.
no. Pelham Estates is off Pelham Road. It's not near Oakview.
There is a group currently zoned to Woodland that is being rezoned to Oakview to provide relief to overcrowding.
That might have been what.
That may be what you're thinking
Because
about.
I did talk to the principal, and he was saying.
Yes,
they were
sir.
Getting some, and
In,
I don't know
You
where
wanna
I
go
thought
over that?
Pelham
in
Falls, I don't
general
know.
terms, that area would be what area, Greg?
It'd
Going
be
from Woodland to Oakview.
Woodland, Oakview, if you're Miss Middleton, off Highway 14, where Pelham Road hits Highway 14.
Yes.
You're familiar with that?
Yes.
And you know where Pelham Road hits 14, you take a right to go back to Woodruff, for instance, and you'll see the church on the left. There's a neighborhood right behind that church, and then right across 14. Those are the two current neighborhoods that's proposed to go from Woodland to Oakview.
And what, do you know the name of those neighborhoods, just by chance?
River Walk is
Okay.
one. Do you guys remember the name? They pull it up for you, the name of the other one. And Nancy has the map up here too, Miss Middleton. This area right here, this is the area that we're talking about. And the two neighborhoods are right where I have the handout right here. River Walk is right here. The church is right here. And then there's a neighborhood right behind the church. Most of this area here off Pelham is all industrial, commercial.
So they were going to Woodland, now they're going to Oakview.
It's Avalon Reserve, Miss Middleton.
And Avalon Reserve, okay.
In Riverview, by the way, not River Walk.
Riverview, thank you. She did. And how many students is that total that are going from that area? Approximately?
What's that? I'm
How
sorry.
many students?
It's approximately 35 in there.
So they'll all be in Oakview starting next year.
By grade, remember we're doing it by grade level. You know, this is the total number, but we're just starting at kindergarten and then phasing it in.
Okay. And that'll be for next year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Great.
Dr. Stiles.
Mr. Stanfield, first, thank you and your team for the outstanding visuals. That was very helpful. Thank you so much. And also, I just want to say, thank you for your team for also strategically planning this process so well. I think you've done an excellent job. I know that I've been on the board for 4 years, and for 4 years, we've talked about the need to remove islands, and that's our desire, and we feel like those are the desires of our communities. And I would just like to say that I was blown away about the number of islands that you eliminated in that strategic thinking and that strategic plan. And just to say I'm thankful for that, and I appreciate it, and I know those communities are also very appreciative. So thank you so much for a job well done.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions related to this portion of the presentation? Okay, Matt, Dr. Royster, before we go any further?
Matt's going to share briefly with you kind of an overview of the program at the school. I thought that might be helpful as you look at your decision making.
Thank you.
Good morning. My understanding is you do have a packet of the full presentation, so what I'm going to do is just touch on some of the highlights of the school as we are working through the planning phases. And so one of the big questions that comes from any family that's in a community is, you have a new opportunity at a new elementary school like Reedy Laurel. What is going to be familiar to my child in their learning experience, but what's going to make it special? And at Reedy Laurel, it's the environmental science piece that is really going to capture our students' imaginations and engage them in a deep, rich curriculum that is focused on not just the standards and those core courses that they've become accustomed to at all of our locations across the district, but how do we embed science into the daily experience of the students? And it starts by capturing the excitement in our science labs. And so there are 2 science labs in that facility. One will be a wet lab, think hydroponics, gardening, that will pair well with the greenhouse on campus, and then a more high-tech lab that's going to focus more on the technology and the way that we uncover and unpack science. But all of that is going to happen in advance. And so what does that mean? It means that for our students that are at the back end of their 2nd grade year, for example, they'll be experiencing the 3rd grade science standards that they would see in the first half of their 3rd grade year, so that when they experience it in the classroom for the deeper mastery exposure, they're already familiar with it and excited, so they have tactile experiences. We're able to create that because Roper Mountain Science Center is a great partner of ours. Thomas, Michael, and the entire team have already been working with us on ground level, talking about how they are going to support our students beyond the realm of just the field trip experiences and the resources they provide, because they're going to work with our teachers and teach them the environmental science components that are most effective. Now, environmental science, depending on where you look or whom you speak, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But these 5 that you see here are our primary focus when we talk about environmental science, which is the atmospheric sciences, environmental chemistry, forestry and ag services, geosciences, and oceanography and marine science. For us as adults, those are big words. For a child, it's an even bigger task to understand that. And so we have decided that we are going to compartmentalize all of that teaching and learning into 3 areas: the earth itself, water, and wind. And those 3 themes are going to kind of define the experience for the students. And so you can see some of them are only going to live within one realm, but with environmental chemistry, it talks directly about the way the earth and its forces interact with each other to further create magic for our students in terms of what science is. Now, through K-4, through the 5th grade years, all of those will be unpacked through the various themes as they connect to our science standards. But the most important thing that we want to do to our community is to explain to them, what will your child gain from the time they enter our location to the time that they leave? Because at the end of the day, the elementary experience is as much about the process as the product that we're sending to middle school. And so for a student that is starting in kindergarten, we're looking at how do we strengthen science and engineering skills, their soft skills, and understanding the earth and preserving its resources. And so you'll notice as we do a trajectory of the student's experience, most of the kindergarten year is a 50-50 split between independently exploring with learning, but also having teacher support and guidance. But then as they progress through, the teacher support and guidance shrinks by the time they hit 5th grade, where we're looking at what we determine to be a true citizen scientist that understands their place in the world, their responsibility to it, and how to inform others. Everything that was guided through teacher support is now being done independently by them, so that they are now creating a capstone project that will be a point of emphasis for those younger than them, where they can serve in mentoring roles, or the community at large. And most importantly, in terms of understanding the earth and preserving its resources, they can clearly communicate to their parents, to their neighbors, to their grandmas at Thanksgiving, why the earth matters, how the earth works, and what our responsibility is in not only preserving it, but helping other people appreciate it. And so as we get to the ground level of these planning phases, we're very excited to see what citizen scientists will be walking through our doors next August, and we're excited to see what that happens. And I want to, again, thank you all for the opportunity to be in this position and to have this school that is about to greet another generation of Greenville County School students with outstanding opportunities that is not necessarily the norm outside of our community, but is most certainly the norm here. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. Any additional discussion or questions on the motion itself? Hearing none, we'll take action now. All those in favor of the motion as made and recommended by the administration, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Majority has voted in the affirmative and the motion carries. Madam Chairman, this concludes section 3 of today's agenda, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sailors. This concludes our committee of the whole agenda for today. I need a motion to adjourn. Before we adjourn, we have a comment from Dr. Royce.
Just one final comment. I want to wish Whitney Hannah happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Sailors has made a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second by Mrs. Mosley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We are adjourned at 10:36 p.m. Thank you. Excuse me, a.m. I'm so sorry. Thank you again for everybody for being here today, and have a lovely, lovely afternoon.